I finished university at a time when our country was fighting for its independence. We were still a colony, well, a self-governing colony of Britain. And we felt that this, many of us young people at the time, young graduates, felt that this process towards independence was taking too long. That we saw the great leader, George Price, who is the father of the nation, had been struggling, and he set as the goal independence of Belize from 1950. And 1964 came, and we got self-government. But from 64 to when I graduated, 67, we weren't making any move towards independence, simply because of this problem we were having with our neighbor, Guatemala, claiming our country,
yes, right.
which has held us back. So I felt the need for me to get involved, to try and speed up this process, the liberation struggle, if you like,
Yes.
for Belize to become an independent country.
Said Musa is the Prime Minister of the Caribbean country of Belize, the third in this nation's short history. He is viewed by many to be a leader of vision and action. He is said to be the archetype of Kipling's man. He can walk among kings, but still keep the common touch. After a remarkable victory at the poll in 2003, Said Musa sat down with Caribnation's David Hinds to reflect on his first term in office and to preview a new, bold and creative agenda for Belize in this millennium.
One of them
The Crossroad nightclub and restaurant is the hotspot for Caribbean music, food, and culture. This tropical oasis is located at the Peace Cross in Bladensburg, Maryland, and opens every day except Mondays. For more information, call the Crossroads at 301-927-1056.
For the rain is pouring.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for speaking to us here in Caribnation.
welcome. Welcome to Belize.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been long in the making, and personally for me, coming from Guyana, I always wanted to see this other mainland, the Caribbean country. Yes, I know you're just coming off of an election campaign, which is a very important aspect of the political process in any country, but for us Caribbean people, it's something that we tend to look forward to.
Yeah.
It's both serious, I would say, and but also it has the other parts of it that one would say light banter and so on and so forth. What an election campaign looks like here in Belize?
Well, this campaign in 2003 was different from any other, I must tell you. Normally, the campaign is a lot of public meetings in every street corner, you can imagine. In the case of Belize, of course, we have 6 districts. The country is well spread out. We are the size of a country like Salvador, 10 times the size of Jamaica. So we have a lot of ground to cover, a lot of rural communities. But this particular campaign was different in the sense that we went, in a sense, the Caribbean way. There was a lot of music, love fest, as we call them, exposing our artists, our cultural groups, much more than the politicians. So it was very much a cultural event, this campaign. Of course, in between the culture, we got the message through to the people. That certainly was the position with our People's United Party. And I think it worked extremely well for us because it kept the attention of the people. And the people are into entertainment. I think they're tired of the ideological cliches and just polemics. They want to see their politicians being with it and being on top of their game and not preaching to them, but really sharing the beauty and the joy that Belize is a good country and we need to keep it that way. It was a very exciting campaign, I must say.
Which brings me to my next question, which is that, of course, you know, the term politician
Yeah.
really means so much. And I mean, you'll forgive me if I say that it has a sort of a negative connotation. I mean, in terms of what people's expectations and so on and so forth. Why you chose to become a politician?
Well, you're quite right in saying, first of all, that there's a great deal of cynicism in our world today. And our region, our Caribbean region, is no exception. That a lot of people think all politicians are corrupt, that all politicians are just in there to line their pockets and this sort of thing. And I think part of our task is to change that, and to change that, what I consider a wrong perception of politicians. I see politics as a profession just like any other, whether it be nursing or teaching, but it requires a bit more than just a commitment to one's vocation. It has to do with being able to work with people. And I think it's a very noble profession in that sense, that a politician is there to serve the people. And many of us have forgotten that. That's what it was all about, service to the people, as opposed to just getting in there and then forgetting that you are a representative of the people and doing what you think you want to do. Well, why did I get into politics, to answer your question? In a way, it was accidental. I mean, I've always loved politics in the sense of reading about great statesmen, politicians, great leaders of the world. But I saw myself more as an attorney, and I studied law. And all my dreams, my hopes were to come home to Belize and enter the legal profession and make a successful career of it. But I guess it has to do with your friends, your peers, the people you come in contact with, and of course also, in a sense, the history, the time of history you're living in. I finished university at a time when our country was fighting for its independence. We were still a colony, well, a self-governing colony of Britain. And we felt that many of us young people at the time, young graduates, felt that this process towards independence was taking too long. That we saw the great leader, George Price, who is the father of the nation, had been struggling, and he set as the goal independence of Belize from 1950. And 1964 came, and we got self-government. But from 64 to when I graduated, 67, we weren't making any move towards independence, simply because of this problem we were having with our neighbor, Guatemala, claiming our country,
Yes, right.
which has held us back. So I felt the need for me to get involved, to try and speed up this process, the liberation struggle, if you like,
Yes.
for Belize to become an independent country. And that is if you like, the anchor, or that caught my attention, that got me involved into politics. And of course, as I said, accidentally, I was sitting quite happily in my law office one day when I got a call from Mr. Price and says, one of our representatives is retiring and the elections is in 2 months' time. 2 months' time.
2 months time.
Are you prepared to run in his place? And of course, I had to go through the process of being accepted by the branch committee and all that. But that's how I got into politics.
And your first run for office, you lost.
I lost.
What did that do to you? Did you think at that time that this thing is not for me, I'm getting out of it, or?
Not at all. I think defeat is a very healthy thing for any individual. And certainly for a politician, I think you should lose at least once. Because it does a lot for you. It makes you realize who's the boss, the people.
All right.
And unless you can convince the majority of the people as to what your convictions are, what you stand for, you are wasting your time in politics. But if you can get your message out, and if the people believe in your sincerity, then you're halfway home already.
Let me take you back a little bit, because I know you did a stint as a trade unionist for a while, and you were also involved in what sounded to me, I'm not too sure, like a kind of Black Power kind of organization. Talk a little bit about that early period before you jump into party politics.
Okay. Well, when I first came home, this was I think 1968 is transcendental period in the lives of many young people at the time.
Yes, the Rodney riots in Jamaica,
At the Rodney
Black
riots,
Power movement.
Black Power in the United
Yes.
States, the uprising in France, in
Yes,
Europe,
yes.
and all this was going on in '68. But for us in this region, it was the consciousness that was being created about the ethnicity, about the Black Power movement, which in a sense was telling us that there are certain people in your society who are being held down simply by the color of their skin or because of their standing in society as opposed to their merit as an individual. And we had people like Evan Hyde, who is now the publisher of the Mandala, Evan X. Hyde,
Yeah.
and Assad Shuman. And we started out being part of this Black Power movement called UBAD, United Black Association for Development. And many people at the time wondered, well, how could Said Musa be part of a Black Power movement?
Well, I was about to ask that too.
And the short answer to that was that we saw blackness, if you like, as being the non-white people of the world. The black, brown, yellow, and the red. The third world people. The people who were being oppressed and exploited. And we were able to expand this vision of the Black Power movement to include these people. And of course, we got a lot of the conscientization from reading works of people like Frantz Fanon, Wretched of the Earth. And of course, our leaders, our heroes at the time were the outstanding third world leaders, whether it be Nehru or Nkrumah,
Right, yes.
later on Mandela, and of course some of the leaders in the Black Power movement in the United States, including Malcolm X, who, you know, so we were imbued and infused with that movement, and that's how I got involved. And later on, we sort of tried to take it to a political plane, and we formed a thing called a People's Action Committee, not a party,
Not a party.
PAC,
Pressure group.
a pressure group,
Right.
to give it a more a class-conscious basis as well. And that's how it started out. As I said, I was interested in politics, but I was not I never planned to become a elected politician, if you like.
So you see, Said Musa, you come from the tradition of the Rodneys and the Lloyd Bess and Clive Thomas and all of that New World movement,
That's right.
coming through the Black Power into the whole class politics and so forth. And of course, you said you had to contend with the question of ethnicity here because Black Power, by the nature of the Belizean society, had to take on a broader definition.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about race and ethnicity here in
Belize.
in Belize. You have been spared any kind of violent racial eruption, let's say as in the case of Guyana. Why? In spite of the fact that you have this kind of multi-ethnic society.
Yes, as you say, we have a very multi-ethnic society. We have the Creole Belizean or the Afro-Belizean. We have the Mestizo Belizean, the Hispanic Belizean, coming from Mexico, originally their ancestors, or from Central America. We have the Maya, who are the indigenous, autochthonous people of Belize. And we have the Garifuna, another black Belizean group, also indigenous in a sense, who have close links with the Garifuna in other parts, St. Vincent and Grenadines.
Right, yes.
In fact, the Garifuna of Belize their ancestors came from St. Vincent down to Honduras.
But they were banished from
Banished,
St. Vincent.
exactly.
Yes.
And then many came to Belize in refuge.
Yeah.
How has it worked for us in Belize? I think this is one of the great tributes to Mr. Price, George Price, our first Prime Minister, and indeed the man who struggled for our independence, that he set as a goal the development of the Belizean identity. And he never spoke of ethnic groups. He spoke of forming a Belizean identity, the Belizean man, the Belizean woman. And I think he drummed that home over the years, the need for us to have this national identity as Belizean, whether you may have Arab background, or German, if you're a Mennonite, or Chinese, or Creole Belizean, or Garifuna, you're first and foremost Belizean. And that has served us well in our country. We've never had a race war in our country. And certainly there's a great deal of harmony in our country on the issue of ethnicity. That's not to say, as I was saying earlier, that we did not have our problems, and we may still have some underlying problems there that we need to deal with. The question of marginalization of certain groups, we have to be conscious of this all the time. But by and large, we have been able to forge a multi-ethnic, multicultural society on a fairly harmonious basis.
If you were to name one thing, the secret of Belize for holding your races together, what would you say that one thing is?
The key has to do with economic opportunity.
Expand on that a little
I
bit.
mean, it's not so much talking about race as providing the necessary opportunities to all ethnic groups. People have to feel a part, have to be involved, whether it be in the process for political process for independence, or whether it be for economic development. If the people are not a part of that, and all the ethnic groups, then you will get the race issue coming to the fore. Because invariably, race is tied to economic standing. And once one ethnic group feels that the other group is taking advantage of that group by the very fact of their ethnicity, that's when you have problems. But if you develop your educational system to ensure that it's inclusive of all your groups, and if you you need to do affirmative action for the people who have been held down during the colonial era. In our case, it was the poor blacks and the Maya, both poor. So it wasn't just blacks, and it wasn't just Maya. So we had to ensure that we treated them as disadvantaged groups and deal with affirmative action to ensure that they become included into the development process. And I think we succeeded to a large extent with that. When I was Minister of Education in a previous government, my chief education officer was a Maya Belizean. And so on. Some of our doctors have been, outstanding public officers have come from all the ethnic groups in our country. I would say, however, that the Creole Belizean, perhaps because of the way the colonial system worked, tended to work or to gravitate towards the public service, the civil servants, whilst the Mestizo Belizean have tended to gravitate towards business. But that is breaking down, perhaps not fast enough, but it is breaking down now.
Is the government playing some role?
Most certainly. We're doing things like we have a youth program, Youth Enterprise Fund, in which we provide seed money to young graduates coming out of whether it be high school or sixth form, for them to get a small capital to start a business of their own, young entrepreneurs, and we are ensuring that this thing is spread right across the board to include all Belizeans, all ethnic groups.
Let's move back a little bit to party politics. There is a view that the political party form is a kind of adversarial kind of movement, in the sense that political parties fighting to win control of government and state engage in this adversarial kind of relationship, and so that when one gets into office, the other one is just waiting on the sidelines to unseat them, and in the process they try to frustrate anything that the other one is doing. Talk a little bit about whether that two-party Westminster model is the thing you think for Belize and the Caribbean as we look to the future.
Well, I look at the African experience, first of all, and I know that deep down that was their concern, that this two-party adversarial system could not work for them. So they sought to move in the direction of the one-party state and involve all the groups within the fold of one party. Anything within the revolution, so to speak, nothing outside the revolution. In the Caribbean, that has not been our experience. We have adopted the Westminster model, and I would say by and large it has worked for us. Certainly in the case of Belize, I see the adversarial system. It's very messy, it's not neat, but it works. It has its pitfalls and its dangers in the sense that one party comes in and try to undo what the other party has done before. So you get a hurt being put on the development process. But when you weigh that up against the freedom that people enjoy, the democracy that we are forging, it has worked. And I think we have matured over the years that now, whilst in the past, certainly I have tried in the past government, and certainly will continue in this government, to change that perception that simply because the PUP government has won, it's not just PUP you're going to hire and you're going to retrench the UDPs, the opposition, from their jobs. We have to get away from that. And we have to understand that we're all Belizeans.
Right.
And we're all working for the national good. And I think by and large we're moving very rapidly towards that very high degree of maturity in our country now.
Let me throw out another model. You mentioned the one-party model,
Yeah.
Which certainly has not, we've never tried it in the Caribbean. I
Right.
mean, Grenada for a brief moment would have gone through that process. Let me throw the model of what is broadly called power sharing, which is that you have the adversarial politics, but when the election is over, that the parties come together and operate within the executive, so that you have unity of movement over the next 4 or 5 years, the case would be. Do you see that as something that we can probably look to in the region, if not in the short term, certainly as a medium or long-term thing?
I don't think it's practical. I think it's a little too idealistic. I mean, it looks nice on paper, as a theory, as an ideal, but I don't see it working. We are by nature into the, if you want to put it this way, the idea that you have to struggle to achieve. And the adversarial system, our judicial system is based on it. And so too is our political system. And out of that thesis and antithesis, you get the synthesis.
Yes.
That works for us.
You come from a very humble working class background. You've risen to the highest office in the state. I know you have a governor general, but in terms of where the actual power lies, the prime minister. Talk a little bit about your journey from a humble person to become prime minister, and see if you can cast that in the mold of what can be achieved by someone who was born poor.
Yes, I was born in a little town to the west of us here in San Ignacio. And my mother went as far as standard 6 primary school. My father, who is an immigrant and got married and met my mother here in Belize, was attending university in his country back in Palestine before he came to Belize. But we were, yes, very poor, certainly when I was growing up. The family had its ups and downs. My father was a merchant, a small merchant, shopkeeper. And later on he became a manager for others. In fact, his last job was managing the Belize Times, our party newspaper. But we grew up knowing the value of hard work, that if you want to achieve, you have to work for it. Going through school, I used to sell tamales to make ends meet, to assist my mother. You know, it's going from house to house on the street selling tamales. And it also taught me that no matter how humble the work that you're doing, if it's a clean, honest way of doing it, there's no need to be ashamed of it. I say this because the values that we have developed over the years, like today, many young people would, even though they may be poor, would feel a sense of shame in going out to sell something on the street. And I think that's one of the terrible things that has happened to us, to our societies, that humble work, or no matter whatever the nature of it. In England, it was the charwoman. No? People used to look down on that. And that was such a healthy profession for these women, because they work hard for their families to do that, to clean homes for people. And even today, of course, we call it different things now. But that certainly is how I was brought up. I had to work hard, I had to struggle. I was the first one in the family to get the opportunity to go to sixth form and university. I come from a family of 8, 5 boys and 3 girls. So my family had it hard. But my parents certainly imbued in me the Christian values of the need to be honest, the need to be true to yourself, and the need to strive for excellence. And I was fortunate that I worked hard and I was able to come first in all my subjects at school, at high school, and so I got the chance to go to sixth form and then university, where I went to Manchester in England. I did law, and then the rest is
recent history, as
history.
they say.
Yeah.
We started with a politician and politics. And,
Yes.
I want to end that. Lots of young people these days are not so much excited about getting into politics as you were in the 60s and early 70s. But there is still a small group that still sees that surface that you talk about. As something to strive for. But even they complain that they are frustrated by what they see as the kind of old politics not going away. Yet we need young people to come into the process. What would you say to that young 18, 19, 20-year-old going through college and thinking about what I want to do, what I want to do to serve my country? What would you say to them?
I would say that there is no greater way, in my view, to be of service to your fellow human beings than to play an active role in the political process. I think also that there's something great about politics, the challenge. It does require sacrifice. You have to understand too that in politics it's a thankless job. If you're looking for people to be thanking you all the time for whatever you do, then it should not be politics. Maybe you should stick to being a teacher, perhaps, or an attorney winning a case, or a doctor performing a medical surgery that's successful. But politics, I think you have to have it within you, first of all. You have to have that burning desire, that passion to want to make a change and to want to make a difference. I think to bring about change, politics is a necessary tool that you need. And so if any person who has that drive, that ambition, that passion for wanting to see things done differently and in a better way, politics is the vehicle.
And on that positive note, who better to give such advice than one who has made it all the way from the top, starting at the bottom? Prime Minister Said Musa, it's a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.